What's up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another episode of Go Talk on Markets presented by the Give Us a Shot Network. Joining me this afternoon is the one and only Jalen Hunter, host of the Unpopular podcast. And today there is a lot to unpack. Giannis had some interesting comments on whether or not the Bucks have failed this season. Plus, 7 of the 8 possible teams have punched their ticket into the conference semis. We still have to wait for the Kings and the Warriors tomorrow, but we're going to give you as close to a full preview of the second round as possible. All that, so much more next on Go Talk on Marcus.
Give them a shot to do what?
What's up, man? How you doing today?
Oh man, can't complain. Cannot complain.
I appreciate you for coming on today. I know it's been a while since we last had you on the show. There's a lot to talk about. Let's start with the Milwaukee Bucks, who unfortunately lost in 5 to the 8th seeded Miami Heat. And at the end, during the post-game presser, Giannis was asked whether or not he thought that this season for the Bucks was a failure. And he went on, basically give us a nice soliloquy about how there is no failure in sports. And he gave the analogy that MJ played in the league for 15 years. He won 6 chips, where the 9 years he did win the chip of failure. So, Jalen, I ask you, did the Bucks fail this year?
I'll say yes. To answer your question directly, yes. I understand what Giannis was saying. It is true you can't win a championship every year, and sometimes you're going to fall short. I get that, and not every season is a failure. But of course, you have to figure out who you're asking. I think it was a successful season for the Thunder. But for the Bucks, no, it was a failure. And I said this on my podcast today, actually. I think that this was one of the biggest upsets in NBA playoff history. And let me explain why. You're the number 1 overall seed. You're outside of Giannis missing 2.5 games, which I understand that did affect things. You're the healthier team. You're going against an 8th seed that had to play in the play-in. The 8th seed struggled all year offensively outside of Jimmy Butler. And they're down their 3rd best player, which is actually one of their best offensive players in Tyler Hero, and one of their best bench players in Victor Oladipo. Kyle Lowry, he hasn't been right with a hamstring injury. I don't know what the hell's going on with Bam Adebayo. And everyone that's supposed to be playing well when they're playing, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez, everyone was playing well. And you lose to an 8th seed. Again, I would understand if Giannis didn't play majority of the series. And I would understand if the 2 games that he missed, they lost both of them. They won in resounding fashion, one of them. Yeah. I was talking about this on my podcast. I cannot for the life of me understand, outside of Jimmy Butler just going crazy, I can't understand how the number 1 overall seed lost to a team that was playing 2 undrafted players, major minutes. Yes. To answer your question directly, it is a failure, and I will go as far to say, to me, it's one of the biggest failures in NBA playoff history because it's just like nothing. Let's not forget the Heat lost a play-in game, which made them have to play 2 of them. Yeah. So it's just I understand and I see where Giannis was coming from, but not this time, Playboy. This was a mistake in my opinion.
So you're right. Like Giannis gave a very nice soliloquy, if you will, that will, I'm sure in the next couple weeks will be chopped up and put in black and white and played slow down on TikTok and Instagram Reels as motivation. Like it's gonna happen because to a degree, right? Like Giannis is right? Like there is no straight path to success.
Yeah.
But as you said, like this is a failure of a
Very
season
much so.
for the Milwaukee Bucks. When you are the number one overall seed, when you are a team that won the chip 2 years ago, coming back down 2-0 against the Suns, follow that with a season where you were put out by the eventual Eastern Conference champion Celtics because, as everyone would say, because Chris Middleton wasn't there, right? So now we're under the unction that, well, if Chris Middleton's playing basketball in that series, you would at least make it out of the East, maybe even go back-to-back and beat the Warriors. You come back this season, Giannis gets hurt, sure, but you beat them by like almost 20 points or more than 20 points in game 2 in that first game that he missed. So clearly something was working in that game. Yeah. And the only game you win is the game when your best player doesn't play. You've got Chris Middleton out there looking like he doesn't know how to play basketball. Drew Holiday was out there looking like he didn't know how to play basketball. Jay Crowder is on record as saying he doesn't know what his role is with the Bucks, which is the reason why he sat out and was ultimately traded from the Suns to the Bucks this season. This comes down to one man. And he beat these allegations when they won the chip. But now he's back in the hot seat, in my opinion. Mike Budenholzer has to go. I do not have faith in Mike Budenholzer. I think this series, once again, he showed us that he struggles to make adjustments. He has always struggled with making adjustments, both game to game and in game. As Giannis said in the post-game presser, if Jimmy Butler's going off the way that he's going off, why is Giannis not on Jimmy? Like why is that not the matchup? Why is that not? He is a former Defense Player of the Year. He has the length. He has the size. Like, why is he not going head up against Jimmy Butler to mitigate the offensive attack that he has and make someone else other than Jimmy Butler beat you? Yeah. At the end of that game, game 5, when Jimmy Butler forced overtime on the crazy shot, right before that inbound play, Mike Budenholzer took Brook Lopez out the game.
That's the same thing. That's the same thing what happened. I don't remember 2013 when Roy Hibbert, the Indiana Pacers took Roy Hibbert out the game and LeBron James went straight to the lane. I don't understand it.
I say what you want. Will they win the series? I don't know, but I know for sure they'd be a game 6 in this series if Brook Lopez is on the court because that ball's not getting to Jimmy Butler. Yeah. If Brook Lopez is on the floor, Mike Budenholzer beat the bad coach allegations when they won the chip in 2021. Those allegations are back because he showed us throughout the course of the season against, as you mentioned, an inferior team by a lot. Like this isn't a fully healthy inferior team. They were inferior and unhealthy, and now you're sitting at home instead of playing who would they be playing?
The Knicks.
The Knicks.
I think. So I agree with what you're saying, but I do think that they're going to have some grace on him because I don't know if you saw the report today, but his brother passed away during the series. Yeah. So, rest in peace to his brother. I pray for the family and everything, but I think that is going to give them some grace as to it's kind of hard to focus in situations like that. But I do agree if we're just talking about literal basketball. Mike Budenholzer, one of the biggest issues that he has had and that we've seen him have is adjustments.
Yep.
The Milwaukee Bucks are one of the best first half teams in basketball. It's just and kind of like football as well. Once you get to the second half, what is your second punch? Once the team figures you out, what do? And as we've seen time after time again, the Bucks have lost a lot of big leads. Now, they've destroyed people because you have Giannis and you have the pieces, but they've lost some big leads this entire year. I think I remember they lost a big lead to the Celtics. I know they lost a big lead to Golden State. They've lost 20-plus point leads because they don't make adjustments. So while I do, I do think that it may be time for Mike Budenholzer to go. I don't know if he will because of the report that came out. And the only caveat and the only thing I will push back on, that's not even a pushback. I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. If you see their best player going off and it's not a guard or it's not like a midget or something, you should put Giannis on him.
Absolutely.
The only not pushback, but I guess I would understand because a lot of people think Drew Holiday is Drew Holiday more than likely is going to make an all-NBA defensive team, whether the first or second one. Yeah. And you're expecting, if I put Drew Holiday, who has slow down people like Steph Curry, slow down people like, Kyrie, Damian Lillard. If I put him on Jimmy Butler, he should not, by the end of the game, look and have 56 points.
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh, and even Jimmy Butler was like, "Hey, this is on you," because the first that 56 was mostly on him, and then he followed it with a 42-point game.
Yeah.
We witnessed an all-time performance by a player. I said this on my podcast. I think that's the greatest performance we've ever seen from a Heat player, and of course, they've had great ones.
Yeah.
But I also think that it was the lack of, and that's where I agree with you at, the lack of adjustments helped this, not only the demise of the Bucks, but the resurgence of Jimmy Butler in this Heat team that's going into a series where I may or may not, we'll talk about this a little bit later, something, but they have the most confidence probably in the playoffs at this point.
100%. This is, and to your point, I agree. I think if you look down, not just, so we didn't just get one of the greatest single game performances in the playoffs with that 56-point game. This is one of the greatest series ever we've seen from a player. When you factor everything in, like, now I get it, the averages were boosted a bit because of the last two games, but even still, like, what he was able to do against one of the best teams in basketball, pretty much by himself, because as you mentioned,
one of
the best defensive teams in basketball. Victor Oladipo went down with an injury. Tyler Hero, I don't know what he was doing. Bam, I don't know what he was doing either. Like, Jimmy Butler put the backpack on and he muscled them out of the first round against a really good basketball team. And I don't want to discredit the Knicks, but he's muscled them into the conference finals.
Yeah.
I don't see the Knicks beating this team. I don't. Now the Knicks are obviously they've got what they have offensive firepower. They've got players off the bench and they're healthy, but they're not the Bucks.
Okay.
They're not the Bucks. And I don't know. It's not going to be a wash, but I don't know. I don't see the Knicks getting past the Heat in this next round. Look, shout out to the Knicks. They won their first playoff series for the first time in 10 years. It's the third time they've been in the conference semifinals this century.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, but there you go. And Jalen Brunson is playing great ball. Like, again, when you talk about success and failures, this was a successful season for the Knicks. If they get washed next round, it won't matter. It's been a successful season. I don't know if the Knicks can beat the Heat in this series, though.
I think, well, spoiler alert, I got the Knicks in 6. And I think a lot of it comes down to the play of Julius Randle. One thing that the Bucks did not present that the Knicks do is guard scoring. While yes, Jrue Holiday can score the ball. I mean, we've seen him have a 50-plus point game this year. He really wasn't a primary scorer in that series. And as we saw, the Bucks guards, whether it was Pat Connaughton, whether it was Jrue Holiday, they struggled mightily scoring. Now, a lot of that could have been because they had to figure out how the hell to guard Jimmy Butler, but Jalen Brunson he was just the cover of the last episode of the podcast. Jalen Brunson has emerged as I think he is, this is not an original point, but I agree with it. I think he's one of the best Knicks guards they've ever had. Now, I'm not saying he is the best, don't get me wrong, but he's one of the best. And what he did going up against Donovan Mitchell was incredible. And I think that the Knicks will be able to exploit the fact of there's not much scoring or reliable scoring on the Heat outside of Jimmy Butler.
Sure.
And I think the determining factor of who will win this series is Julius Randle. I don't like the body language that I'm seeing from Julius Randle. I don't like and with the ankle injury, and it just doesn't seem like, even though they're winning, of course, and they're in the conference semifinals, it just doesn't seem like he wants to be there. And I think this may be the last year we see Julius Randle in a Knicks uniform. But I think that if he's able to win the matchup between Bam Adebayo. I think that's going to determine who wins. I know Jimmy Butler is going to be Jimmy Butler, but when you have Jalen Brunson playing well, RJ Barrett finally found his shot. Emmanuel quickly, well, kind of found his shot. Emmanuel quickly didn't have to do much in that series because Jalen Brunson was just killing Donovan Mitchell. I think that they're riding a momentum and they're able to present things and capitalize on things that the Bucks didn't do. And well, yes, I think the Bucks are a better 3-point shooting team. I think the Knicks are better when it comes to, running fast breaks and exploiting their weaknesses, because now you're really about, hopefully, I think you're really about to see the absence of Tyler Hero, because you're going to throw I hope they throw everything in the kitchen sink at Jimmy Butler or they're going to lose. But I guess I trust Jalen Brunson that much. My namesake, I have Jalen. I have the Knicks in 6, actually.
I do agree with you on the point of Jalen of Julius Randle, and that's why I don't think the Knicks are going to win. I have yet to see Julius Randle in meaningful basketball games string together 2 consecutive games. I've yet to see that. And I can sit here and I can pick the low hanging fruit about how he only goes left, and I can do the same with RJ Barrett, and I can talk about all that stuff. But really, this does come down to Julius Randle. I agree with you. The thing that works in the favor of the Knicks is that the X factor for the Heat, because Tyler Herro's not there, is Bam Adebayo.
Yeah.
And if there's anyone that is just as inconsistent offensively as Julius Randle, if not more, it's Bam Adebayo.
Yeah.
So whichever of those two guys has a better series, their team should win the series. Yeah. Now, I don't necessarily like that I'm putting my faith in Bam Adebayo because he's on my D and B list, and because he also has struggled putting together 2 consecutive meaningful playoff games or meaningful basketball games together. But I do think that there is something about Jimmy Butler in the playoffs that is vastly different from Jimmy Butler in the regular season. Like, we can have all the arguments we want about whether or not Jimmy Butler is a top 10 player, top 15 player, whatever in basketball.
Yeah.
That's whatever. But one thing we do know is that come postseason time, year in and year out, Jimmy Butler is one of the, not even 10, Jimmy Butler is one of the 5 best dudes on a basketball court come postseason time. Like, he shows us that consistently.
Yeah.
And I am starting to get into that LeBron second stint with the Cavs feeling with Jimmy Butler at this point, where like they need to figure it out, because as phenomenal as his playoff performances has been, and as much as he has shown us that he can backpack this team, that's not a recipe for success if you're talking about winning a championship, right? Like in 17 and 18, LeBron James, he did all that backpacking. He didn't get a chip out of it. And Jimmy Butler can do all this backpacking, and he can have all these outstanding all-time performances. But at the end of the day, it's not going to add another trophy to the already very full trophy case in South Beach. It's not.
I think what is, it helps them, of course, because the mantra, but it's also a detriment to the Heat, is that mentality of we can win with anybody. Yeah. And of course they've had a string of success, but look at the people that they've won with. Alonzo Mourning, they won. Well, actually, we just talk about championships. They won with Shaq. They won with D Wade, LeBron. Well, those are once in generational players.
Yeah.
And of course, you can put a Mario Chalmers or a James Jones. Of course, you can put them on the team because you have LeBron James. But and Jimmy Butler, I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think he's a top 10 player until you get to the playoffs. Then he's probably a top 4 or 5 player we've ever seen. Yep. It's just what it is, and you see this a lot. Stars understand when they have to be stars. There's a difference. In fact, there's a difference between a star and a superstar. And we're seeing it play out drastically. Let's see. We're seeing, and we'll talk, I'm sure we'll talk about some, we're seeing that playing out drastically with the Golden State series. Star versus superstar. A lot of people going into the series thought Jordan Poole was a star. He was incredible last year. He got his bag. And what you expect a superstar to do or a star is to improve your game when it matters the most. And in fact, we're seeing that if we want to talk about this series, we're seeing that with Jalen Brunson. He's improving his game when it needs the most. Now, it could be for Jalen Brunson because he just didn't have the opportunity when we get to when he was in Dallas. But we're seeing the difference between a star, maybe a Jordan Poole, but he doesn't elevate his game. But then you see a superstar. You're playing next to a Steph Curry. Now, no, I'm never going to say Jordan Poole's on the same level as Steph Curry. But even though he gets crap for it because, you know, it is what it is, Steph Curry always improves his game in the playoffs. Jimmy Butler improved his game in the playoffs. That's one of the biggest reasons why the Bucks didn't win. Giannis was unable to improve his game this year in the playoffs. Every single star that we've seen, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, it's just and that's kind of the problem that I have with Bam Adebayo and Julius Randle. Their games stay the same, and Quantas is kept. Bam Adebayo has not improved since his second year in the league. If you look at his numbers, if you look at his splits from this year to his second year in the league, they're damn near identical.
Yeah.
So I agree with you with the Jimmy Butler, and that's one of the biggest reasons why, while I said Knicks in 6, I'm not very confident in it, because there's no doubt in my mind from the track record that Jimmy Butler has that he will not be. You know, Jimmy Butler's definitely going to be the best player in the series. It's just who is going to if the players that are supposed to come along with him come along, then I agree with you. It's going to be a quick series for the Heat. But if not, and they honestly didn't really last series against a better team, it could be quick. It could be a quick exit because now you're playing against a coach that's actually really good with adjustments because he plays his team, his starters every minute, and that is Tom Thibodeau. So, you know, we'll see how it is.
Yeah, I give the Heat a lot of crap because even on a year-to-year basis, like we look like in last offseason was a perfect example of this. There were rumblings about a lot of different players that can go a lot of different places. And when you look at some of those players that went to certain places, like Malcolm Brogdon would have been very beneficial to this team. Just like all of these players that end up going different places, like the Heat are like never aggressive at the trade deadline anymore. They're never aggressive in the offseason anymore. Like it's all about we'll just kind of build through the draft, really the undrafted, and see what happens. And like that's not a recipe for success. Yeah, we live in an era in basketball now where, number one, there's a lot more parity across the league. Like you have obviously your powerhouse teams like the Bucks, who obviously have gone home, but you have the Bucks, you have the Celtics, right? You have a team like the Sixers who may be ascending to that. We'll talk about them in just a second. You've got obviously, you know, the Warriors weren't really that this year because they struggled on the road, but generally a healthy Warriors is supposed to be a powerhouse basketball team, and all this. And then you've got like the teams that kind of fit well together and they make some noise, like your Knicks, like your Warriors, like your King, or not your Warriors, sorry, like this, the Cavs, like the Kings this year. Like the Heat are they just play good basketball. Like they're a fundamentally sound basketball team because that's the way that Eric Spoelstra coaches. And so you can never count them out of a playoff hunt. But since the bubble, it's been hard, at least for me, to look at the Heat as a legitimate playoff or a title contender because they haven't done much of anything. Like their biggest free agency or move of any kind of outsourcing has been Kyle Lowry, and that hasn't worked. It has not been good so far in South Beach. So like the Heat need to start if Jimmy's going to stay and if they're going to build around Jimmy and if they want to get back to being one of the marquee teams in the league and one of those top dogs in the league, they're going to have to start being aggressive. You see over the course of the offseason so many times, all these names get thrown up into potential trade packages and all these names are rumored to be on the move, and the Heat never sign those guys. They'll pick one guy out of the litter because it's the veteran experience or whatever the case may be, and then in the case of Kyle Lowry, it just doesn't pan out. This is not a recipe for success. If you want to win a bunch of playoff games, if you want to just put butts in seats, sure, continue to do this because Jimmy Butler can put butts in seats down there in Miami. But if you don't win a championship, build around your best player. That's how it works. That's how it's worked from the beginning of time. That's how it's going to work until the end of time. And the Heat recently have not done that.
Yeah, I guess I'll play devil's advocate because, I mean, just a year ago, they did make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they were a Jimmy Butler shot away from winning. However, I don't know if they would have beat Golden State.
No.
But so I do agree with you saying as far as this, there is definitely a ceiling to this blueprint that they're trying to build their team from. And that ceiling is not a championship. No. Unless you make some major moves or you get one of those, like you said, free agents that they never get outside of LeBron James. It's like you need to make something happen, and I don't see it. So I agree.
The Heat are suffering from what can only be described as Green Bay Packers syndrome. Like every year while Aaron Rodgers was there for the last 5 or 6 years, you saw there's all these names that were like, oh, maybe they fit good in Green Bay, right? There was the Odell Beckham Jr.'s, or the Brandon Cooks, the Will Fullers of the world. Like there was all this great talent in the draft during the season. All these players that wanted to, want it out. OBJ has been on record several times how saying when he was in New York before he got traded the first time, man, I'd love to go play with Aaron Rodgers. And every time as fans of this team, we sat down and we watched player after player, season after season go by, and all these fantastic players that have voiced interest in wanting to at least to go out or have voiced interest in wanting to play with Aaron Rodgers. They're all just sit back and watch as they've all gone elsewhere, right? That's where the Heat are right now. The Heat are suffering from Green Bay Packer syndrome, and until they get over themselves and recognize that they're in 2023 and Jimmy Butler, as phenomenal as he is, can't do it alone.
Yeah.
Until we get to that point, until the Heat get to that point, this is what we're going to keep seeing. We're going to keep seeing a bunch of Herculean efforts by Jimmy Butler, further cementing themselves as potentially one of the greatest playoff performers of all time, and no championships to show for it. Jimmy's not getting any younger, and if I'm not mistaken, his contract is up either this year or next year. Mm-hmm. Like, they need to start getting the ball rolling if they want to. Now I get it. They were just in the finals in the bubble, but the bubble almost feels like an eternity ago when you consider A, all the moves that have been made since then, and B, all of the different teams that have won championships since then and the way in which they've won them. Like, it's time to get a move on. If you want to win a championship, build around Jimmy Butler.
Gotcha.
Let's stay in the East. And let's talk about what I think might be – it has the potential to be the most exciting series of this second round.
Can I say something real quick? Yeah. I'm here to say I remember last time you had me on, I think it was the season preview, right? And you said something on your platform. And I damn near laughed you off your platform. You said this could be the 76ers year.
I did say that.
And I was like, ain't no way. Like because it was me and I think Shane, it was a couple people, and we just like laughed you out the building.
Yep.
While I still don't agree, I'm here to apologize to you, my friend, because you saw something that I clearly didn't see. So you can continue. I apologize.
I do appreciate that. I do appreciate the come to Jesus moment there. This one, I think, has the potential to be one of the more hard-fought series of this next round. I think these are two teams that match up very well. And as we know, when it comes to playoff football or playoff anything, in this case, basketball, matchups make or break the series. And this is a battle of two of the premier duos in basketball. You've got Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown on one side. You have James Harden and Joel Embiid on the other side in Philly. Obviously, the 2-3 matchup. I definitely expect this one to go 7. But who do you have winning the series?
Well, before I give my prediction, you said something. You just said something that I want to kind of elaborate on, and that is there is parity in basketball, which I completely agree. However, looking at these playoffs, I don't think there's a great team in these playoffs. I don't think there's a great team in basketball. I think there's really good teams. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Like, I think the Celtics are a really good team. I think the Sixers are a really good team. I think, The Kings are a really good team. The Denver Nuggets are a really good team. But I don't think there's a great team. And that was kind of proven to me with the Milwaukee Bucks losing and how they lost. I thought the Milwaukee Bucks was the clear favorite to win it all.
Sure.
And it also was proven to me when I looked at the Celtics and Hawks series and how the thing people say that the regular season is not important. And I will say it's clearly as not important. It's not as important as the playoffs, of course, but in the regular season when you build habits. And those habits are either going to help you or hurt you when it comes to playoff time, which is kind of, and again, I'm sure we'll talk about, is kind of what we're seeing with Golden State right now.
Yes.
The habits that the Celtics built was they live and die by the three, even more than Golden State. And they've, just like the Milwaukee Bucks, they've given up huge leads. There was no reason why the Atlanta Hawks should have won a game in that series, let alone two.
Yeah.
And the Celtics look like one night they can look like world beaters, look like the best team by far. Then other nights they look like, dude, what is Jason Tatum doing? What is Jalen Brown doing? And on the other hand, I feel like the 76ers are so dependent on the success of Joel Embiid. And quiet as is kept, James Harden did not have a good series last year. Our last series. Yeah, he was good with assists. When we talk about scoring, he really wasn't. It was Tyrese Maxey. And while yes, Tyrese Maxey is good, they didn't bring James Harden on that team and pay him all that money to be the third best player. Or to be, and I agree with Charles Barkley to an extent, to lead the league in assists. They need him to score. I think that I do agree with you that this could potentially be a long series. I also think it could be a quick series as well, because as the reports are coming out that it's doubtful that Joel Embiid plays game one with the back injury. And this team has no wiggle room when it comes to, like, Joel Embiid has to play well. James Harden has to play well because the Celtics capitalize they are able to capitalize on what the 76ers can't do. So while I do agree that it could possibly be a long series, that is only depend on the health of Joel Embiid, because we know if he's out there, he's going to play and he's going to do well. And James Harden, and as we've seen, and I talked about this on my podcast. I'm sorry, I keep plugging my podcast. That's crazy, but I did this on my podcast. The whole legacy talk for James Harden is going to kick in this series. And he has to have a big series. He has to play better than Jalen Brown, or he has to be the second or third best player in the series, which we have not seen in a while. And because of that, I tweeted this. I think the Celtics just punched their ticket to the NBA championship once the Milwaukee Bucks lost. Because to me, the Milwaukee Bucks was the only team that was in the East, at least, that could go toe-to-toe with the Celtics. And because, I mean, think about it. Imagine going to the game and you're depending on a Tobias Harris big game. Whew! Or you're depending on PJ Tucker to hit 3 threes. Whew! Or you're depending on Doc Rivers to hold a lead. Like, what I'm saying is, if Joel Embiid is not playing, and as we're seeing, he will be hampered with a back injury, I don't know. I don't think James Harden's at that point of his career where he can be the man anymore. So I have Celtics in probably 6 or 7.
So there's two things you said, one of which I agree with, one of it I disagree with a bit. The Doc Rivers thing, I think, is an amazing point, because just like Mike Budenholzer, if there's one coach in the league that just refuses to make adjustments,
it's Doc.
It's Doc Rivers. And we have seen since he's been in Philly that has been their undoing. Healthy Embiid or not, if Doc Rivers fails to make adjustments in this series, that is going to be their undoing. Because as you mentioned, the Celtics come out here, won a couple of these games, and all they need really is 2 of these games to look like world beaters. Done. Yeah. Here's the thing with James Harden, and I have been beating this James Harden drum by myself.
Oh no.
and I'm going to keep beating it because because I think it needs to be said. I understand the idea that James Harden is in Philly for the scoring.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that, and I don't. This game is you win a game by scoring the most points. So I'm not saying that that's not important, but I think that as long as James Harden is playing elite basketball, whatever that looks like, the Sixers will be okay. And here's what I mean by that, right? When you look at now, this wasn't really an elite basketball game, but when you look at what Russ did against the Suns, I think it was in game 1.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like 3 for 19, but he had like 4 blocks, he had like a bunch of boards, he had some steals. Like he was affecting the game in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen more, admittedly, more times than anyone should be comfortable with games where James Harden has not been effective scoring, whether that be he was being inefficient or he just wasn't filling up the box with points, but he was being effective other ways, primarily with assists, which is how he was the assist leader this year, and steals. Game 1 is important. James Harden has to score in game 1.
Oh, for sure.
We need to see that version, that the elite, deadly assassin that we all have come to love and in some cases hate of James Harden. That James Harden has to show up for game 1.
Quick, before you keep going, I don't mean to cut you off. When's the last time you've seen that from James Harden? And that's all. That's when's the last time you've seen in this elite game that you're talking? Now, I'm not just saying scoring. When's the last time that you looked and said, "Wow, this was an incredible game. This was an elite game."
James Harden had one of those games against the Nets. No, it was the Nets.
The Nets.
What? It was the Nets, so it didn't matter. I admit it was not a good basketball team, but he had one of those games against the Nets when he was very effective scoring. It was.
I think it was game 2. I believe it was game 2.
He had like 20 or
something,
like 20 something and 20, and Harden had like 20 something and 13.
Yeah,
like that was one of those games.
Okay.
He's gonna lead a lot of those against the Celtics. He's gonna lead. He's gonna need a lot of those against the Celtics. I don't discount that. But what? So I am on record as saying I do think the Celtics are going to go back to the finals. I've said that from the beginning of the season. And I do still stand on that because I do think they will win this series. But I also and I think both things can be true. I do still think that this could be the Sixers' year. And I think that all comes down to, again, how effective James Harden is and how effective Doc Rivers is. Right? Because to your point, while James Harden did not come to Philly to be the third best player, he did come to Philly to help accelerate the progression and improvement of Tyrese Maxey. And to a degree, he has done that because of despite the fact that he's not in his prime anymore, he does demand a lot of attention, and Tyrese Maxey has benefited from that. And we've seen Tyrese Maxey have some crazy games over the course of this season, and I think he had a really solid game against the Nets.
I think he won them game 3 or game 4.
He won them game 3. So Maxey has benefited from Harden's presence. But you're right, Harden has to be the second best player on the team, the best player when Embiid's not available. This is a series that I think when you look at it from the Celtics perspective, the Celtics have to play Celtic basketball. And as corny as that sounds, when you look at the 2 games they won in the finals last year, they won those 2 games because in both of those games, the Warriors put up some of the worst numbers ever shooting historically in a playoff game. Or playoff or finals, whatever. Like they were really, really bad, and the Celtics were able to combat that by having 2 of the greatest shooting nights the NBA Finals has ever seen. The Celtics need to play the basketball we saw them play last night when they closed out the series, where both Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown are hitting their shots, are getting to their spots, and are commanding the game. Because when they are in control, then everybody else can fill in the gaps. You see Al Horford hit big threes every now and then. You see Robert Williams get more comfortable down low and really start to be that defensive anchor. You see the guys come off the bench and flourish. You see Marcus Smart get a lot more comfortable. Every time you see the Celtics struggle, it's not just because Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown are struggling, obviously. It's usually because Marcus Smart is shooting too much.
Yeah.
Robert Williams has to focus more so on being an offensive presence than a defensive presence. Al Horford always has the ball in his hands way too much in these games when the Celtics are struggling, and the bench isn't clicking.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown set the tone, as all best players on their teams do. But for the Celtics, it means so much more because other players can't play their roles or aren't good enough to step in and fill the absence as consistently as you would like to see your role players do. Case in point, the Bucks in game 2 without Giannis, and then the Bucks in game 3 without Giannis.
Yeah.
So you're right. This can either be a really quick series in the favor of the Celtics, or this can be a really long series, and it can go either way. That's what it's looking like. And the only way the Sixers, I think, can have a legit shot at winning the series is if it goes long. Because they're not getting rid of the Celtics in 4 or 5.
Oh, not at all.
They're not. This is going to be a 6 or 7 game series that the Sixers are going to win.
Yeah.
They're going to lose game 1. So they're already going to be 1 game behind without Embiid.
I agree with everything that you're saying. I just think one of the biggest question marks going into every series that the Celtics have is the health of Robert Williams. Well, that doesn't, I don't even know, was it Reed? Who's the backup center for the 76ers? Is Reed.
Not Reed?
So it's just like, yeah, that Robert Williams he's gonna eat. And I just don't. Yes, it's the Nets, and yes, they swept the Nets. They did what they were supposed to do, but there was a lot of things that I did not like about that series. How it felt like James Harden was getting beat multiple times from Spencer Dinwiddie, or how they had Michael Jordan Bridges going crazy. It's just. I don't know, man. I like the Sixers, and I think this is going to be a very interesting series. Don't get me wrong. I know it sounds like I'm hating. I do like the Sixers. It's just there were, even in a sweep, there were habits that I didn't like, or how Tyrese Maxey had to save them 2 straight games.
Yeah.
And it's, but I do agree with you. I think it's going to be a long series, and I have the Celtics.
One more thing, to your point about Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris was the second leading scorer for the point per game score for the Sixers in the last series.
It might be a quick one. It might be a quick one. If that is
going to cut it. It is not going to cut it. That is not. James Harden can't average 17 against the Celtics.
Yeah,
and if Tobias Harris is averaging 20 a game against the Celtics, either the Celtics are playing really, really, really bad basketball, or James Harden and Joel Embiid are playing really, really bad basketball.
Yeah,
that's what it is. And the chances of the Celtics playing real bad basketball to the point where Tobias Harris is averaging 20
is very low.
Very slim.
Very slim.
Very slim. Let's head in to the West and talk about the only series in the West that is confirmed right now, and that's the Nuggets and the Suns. This is a series I have personal vested interest in.
Okay.
For reasons I'm sure you already know, because Kevin Durant's playing for the Suns, but also because it is, I think, the time when we are going to see the real Nikola Jokic. And I don't mean the 2-time defending MVP Nikola Jokic. I mean the Nikola Jokic that shies away from the big moments and the spotlights. The Nuggets are the 1 seed. The Suns are the 4 seed. This series tips off tonight at 8:30 in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing 2 things. Who do you have winning game 1? And then who do you have winning the series altogether? I
have the Suns winning game 1. I think the Suns are going to present problems for everybody, but especially for the Nuggets that they have not seen yet this playoffs. Of course, they only played 1 team, but the Timberwolves are drastically different from the Suns. And one thing that you did see that that the Nuggets struggled with was containing Anthony Edwards when he was in attack mode. Mm-hmm. Well, you have Devin Booker playing at an all-time level, and you have Kevin Durant being Kevin Durant. Those are 2 players that are drastically better, at least right now, than Anthony Edwards, and they could barely stop Anthony. So, and if Karl Anthony Towns hits a couple of his shots, it might be I'm not going to say different series, but it may have won a game. Yeah. However, I have the Nuggets winning this series because one thing that I did not like when I was watching the Suns and Clippers series is how many minutes the starters have to play. Now, I'm not calling in, I'm not doing any injury to anybody, but you're asking Kevin Durant to play damn near 45 minutes a game. You're asking Devin Booker to play damn near 45 minutes. Chris Paul, 40 minutes a game. And Chris Paul old enough to be my father. So it's like you're asking these people to play that have injury history and that are a little older in their career outside of Devin Booker to play heavy minutes. And that's kind of what we saw. Why, even though it was a 4-1 thing, that's why every game was competitive against the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, because at the end of the game, Kevin Durant's tired. The only person that still has the energy is Devin Booker, and Russell Westbrook is doing any and everything to get some points, and then Norman Powell's going off, and then Batum is hitting three. So it's the fact of I understand Cameron Payne was not available most of the series, but if you kind of like with Tobias Harris, if you're depending on Cameron Payne, sorry. And I do like how deep the Nuggets seem to be. KCP is giving them big minutes. Aaron Gordon, of course, is giving them big minutes. Morris is giving them big minutes. Yeah, they're backup center, but it's going to be hard backing up Jokic. But and Jamal Murray is playing like, Jamal Murray of old. I just like how deep and how much they can get from their reserve, the Nuggets. So while yes, I have the Suns beating them game 1 because it's just like, and not to mention, I don't like, for some reason, DeAndre Ayton plays like he's a guard. Like he wants to be a guard so bad. It's like, dude, get in the paint.
Yeah.
He plays almost worse than Karl Anthony Towns sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So it's just like, I don't think this may be the series that he's just going to get the best of Nikola Jokic, but I do think they're going to put Nikola Jokic in every single switch situation with Kevin Durant. And it's going to be bad for the 2-time MVP. But again, I don't like that the Suns' recipe to win is play the starters damn near the whole game. I'm like, damn, Damian Lee can't get some minutes. So I have the Suns winning game 1, but I have the Nuggets winning this series. I'll say in 7.
I agree that I think the Suns win game 1, but the Suns are also going to win the series. You're right. Kevin Durant averaged almost 44 minutes a game in first series. And for those of you guys who just don't know how long an NBA game is,
48.
There's 48 minutes in the game. So, just about all but 4 minutes of the game. Devin Booker averaged 43 minutes, and Chris Paul averaged as many minutes as he is almost his age. He averaged 39 minutes, which is not a recipe for success.
Yeah, not at all.
But here's the thing, right? And with every positive to a trade, there's always a negative, right? Mm-hmm. The Kevin Durant trade is a big plus because it's Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
The big minus to this is the versatility and the depth that got the Suns to the finals in 2021 is not there anymore. Mm-hmm. Once you get past Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton, who is Charmin Soft, and Chris Paul, there's Torrey Craig, there's nothing wrong with Torrey Craig because he's productive. But you've got Torrey Craig, Josh Okogie, Bismack Biyombo, Jock Landale, who no idea who that is, Damian Lee, Landry Shamet, Cameron Payne, Ish Wainwright, don't know who that is either, Bubble Jordan, TJ Warren, and Terrence Ross.
Name me the one defender you just named.
There is
Bismack.
Yeah. So that is not a good recipe for success. But what I will say is this. It might be blind loyalty. That's what it's been described to me as. I think I just have seen enough to know that this is how it works. Okay. Kevin Durant has proven time and time again, whether you would like to admit it or not, that when you need him, he will show up and be one of the best players, if not the best player on the planet in a playoff scenario.
Except for the Celtics.
Except for the Celtics. You're right. That was tough. Real tough. That is what this is going to require from the Suns.
Mm-hmm.
And Nikola Jokic is going to have to match that. Not many times in Kevin Durant's career has he been outplayed by the opposing team's best player. It hasn't happened. It's happened, like against the Celtics.
Yeah.
But it hasn't happened often.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at this team, I am looking at a guy in Kevin Durant who's been there, done that, has 2 T-shirts and 4 pieces of hardware to show it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at a guy in Devin Booker who has been in the conversation, admittedly, as one of the best players in the postseason so far through a round run. He's averaging 37 points per game. He's playing amazing. Here's the one thing I'll note. It's just a stat, but it's worth mentioning. The Suns have lost 1 game since KD's been there. It was game 1 against the Clippers. Mm-hmm. And earlier this week, when we were talking about these series and JT from JT and Don was on the show, he had gave mention to the fact that the Suns did lose that 1 game. Meanwhile, the Nuggets at that point had not lost a game. And when you compare the loss that the Nuggets took to the loss that the Suns took in their series, let's think about this for a second. The Nuggets lost game 4 on the road, up 3-1, because they let Anthony Edwards have one of the greatest games of his career in the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
The Suns lost game 1, the first game of the playoffs, against a Clippers team who, while they didn't have Paul George, Kawhi played in that game. And Kawhi played good basketball in that game,
mm-hmm.
as he typically does in the playoffs when he's healthy. When I look at the Suns, you're 100% right. There is a lot left to be desired on the bench. But this is a team offensively. I know they're top heavy, but it's a lot to handle between Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Chris Paul when he flips the switch in the 4th quarter when he feels like he has to. And I think that the beauty of Kevin Durant being there is that is now what Chris Paul is. Chris Paul is the game manager, quarters 1 through 3. And if necessary, as we saw him do the other day, he flips the switch in the 4th quarter and he just turns back the hand of time, and he goes back and gives us a vintage Chris Paul performance. I think the Suns are going to win this series because I think they're the better team. Mm-hmm. I think the Suns are going to win this series because I've never had faith in the Nuggets. I have yet to see and I don't like saying this because it's really corny and it's lazy, but like it is something that you have to consider. When you look at what Nikola Jokic has done over the last 2 seasons, in the regular season, he's been phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Over the last 2 seasons in the postseason, like you were mentioning earlier, he doesn't have those elevations. Like he's usually much of the same. Now last year was different because there was no Jamal Murray and no Michael Porter Jr., so he kind of had to do more. So he did more by way of circumstance. But so far this season, in this first round, we didn't see anything in the first round against the Timberwolves that we wouldn't have seen Jokic do over the course of the regular season. Now, he had a really good game. I don't remember when it was. He did have one really good game in that series, but it was a game that we've seen him have before. Mm-hmm. He's yet to have. This is going to be the series where he's going to have that elevation that you were talking about earlier, that superstars, when they take that next step in meaningful playoff games in the postseason, every game is a meaningful playoff game against this team because it is very possible that the winner of this series makes it out of the West.
I'll play devil's advocate for a couple of things that you said, and I'm not saying that you're wrong in anything that you said. I'll just play devil's advocate. Point number 1: Nikola Jokic in the playoffs. We know Nikola Jokic's biggest weakness is his defense. We know this. He's not the fastest, not the best, quickest on his feet as far as man defense. But where I will give him credit, and I don't think that it's shined upon a lot, is he thrives in the matchups that he's supposed to thrive in. So you talk about last series. We didn't have to see much from him against Karl-Anthony Towns because Jamal Murray was averaging damn near 38 points a game. And he was still averaging, I think, almost 15 assists. Now, yes, he did. He did like have some duds, but they still won those games. The time that you saw him struggle the most. Let's talk about last year. Last year, everyone, I mean, you're going against a player that's so unorthodox in Draymond Green. While no, he's not going to score. Draymond Green takes you out of the paint, and you have to guard Draymond Green. And while no, he's not Michael Jordan, he can do things. He can present things that. Now, on top of that, Jamal Murray wasn't there, so Steph Curry's going crazy. Then you can go like every single year. I believe Nikola Jokic just lost to the team that's either went to the finals or won. Except for the Utah Jazz one, but that's when well, no, they won that series. So yeah, they lost to
the only
Lakers.
time they didn't was when they lost when they were put out by the Blazers the last in 2019,
And that was the Dame year. Like that's Dame.
that was the Dame year. Yeah.
And I will push back on the point that I forgot the name that you said that was on the podcast earlier this week. If you want to break down those losses, everyone knows that a desperate team plays the greatest basketball of all time. Hell, we saw that, and I'm sure we'll talk about it against the Golden State Warriors and the Kings. A desperate team is going to play the greatest basketball. They're going to hit every shot. They're going to shoot damn near 100% from three. And if you don't match that energy, you're going to lose. But what did we see? They were down, 10 points with like a minute left.
Mm-hmm.
And scored a total of like 12 points in 30 seconds to force it to go to overtime. And if it wasn't for Anthony Edwards hitting that big like game, you know what I'm saying? So, and if we talk about the Suns' loss, the Suns were up 15 points. They can't, of course, Kawhi Leonard was playing, but they came back and then Russell Westbrook had the defensive play while Devin Booker was complaining to the ref about it was a foul when it clearly wasn't. So while we can talk about both of those losses, they both kind of shine light on what we've seen. Well, yes, the Nuggets did lose. When they flipped that switch and Jamal Murray's going crazy and KCP's hitting big threes and Nikola Jokic is throwing the ball and Aaron Gordon is doing reverse dunks under the rim, they're hard to beat. And on top of that, the loss that we saw for the Suns, we've seen, in fact, we saw this the entire series. They'll get up to 15, 16-point leads, and then you look up and the Clippers tie the game. Like, what the hell? Hold on, what's going on here? Is Terrence Mann going crazy? So I agree with you that Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant. Also, shouts out Kevin Durant, third player in Nike history to have a lifetime contract. Yeah, you have Kevin Durant, you have Devin Booker, probably first or second best player in the playoffs this season. But I saw a switch, and we've seen a switch this playoffs that the Nuggets can flip and quickly. And we haven't seen, because probably the health of Jamal Murray, we haven't seen that too much. We've also seen the Suns can just be coasting. And then like, oh, shoot, they're up 15. Okay, well, we're good. Let me go to the store. Come back. They are Westbrook missed layup away from tying the game. So I'm like, what the hell? So we haven't seen good habits from the Suns. I do agree with you. They have the de facto player in Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant can give you 50. He can give you a triple-double. And I do agree, outside of maybe one series, when he needs to be the best player, he is. And you can kind of argue the series that they lost to the Bucks, but Kevin Durant was good those last, 2 games?
Oh, yeah.
I just don't know. I have all the faith in the world in Kevin Durant. Mm-hmm. And right now, I have all the faith in the world in Devin Booker's going to score. I just don't know. Now DeAndre Ayton's, he's not guarding Zubac. He's guarding a 2-time MVP. Now, Okogie isn't guarding Terrence Mann, who can't really shoot a 3. Now you're guarding KCP, who I think is shooting like 50-something% from the 3-point line, or 40-something%. So it's just it forces them to have to do things differently. And I don't know if they'll be able to do that. That's one of the biggest reasons why I have the Nuggets winning.
I can't disagree. I think that it can go either. Maybe it is blind loyalty. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I am loyal to KD to a fault. Maybe that's what it is.
Mhm.
It is just difficult. Now, I will say this because I agree with you. There has been a lot of coasting in Phoenix. I think a part of it is because they have the luxury to be able to because of how well Devin Booker and KD play basketball. I think the other part of it is because they didn't have all that time because of KD spraining his ankle on the freak accident during warmups. They didn't get the time during the end of the season that you would have liked for the after the trade deadline to gel and kind of get those things together. So a lot of times you see the Suns just resort to let's just play pickup basketball. Like let's just play basketball as if we would as if we were trainers in the gym at the rec, and it works out for them because they're all really good at basketball. I fully I am hoping that Monty Williams can get back to the coaching that he showed us in the bubble and the season after. Because the last two seasons, he hasn't been that Monty Williams. He's been closer to a Mike Budenholzer or a Doc Rivers than he has been to himself. I think in this series, especially, that could play perfectly into the hands of the Nuggets because the Nuggets are just going to do the same thing until you stop them, which forces the opposing coach to have to make adjustments. Yeah. That does make me a bit nervous, but I do think the Suns can win this series in 6 or 7. I think this is going to be a long one. Let's get to the final series of the second round, which has yet to be finalized because the Warriors, as you alluded to throughout the show, could not handle business last night at home. So let's start with the Lakers, who are the 7th seed. They've obviously beat down on the Grizzlies, taught Dylan Brooks a lesson, and probably sent him to the Shanghai Sharks or whatever. First Take the other day was talking about the championship window for the Lakers and how if they would have lost last night, it could have closed. Do the Lakers need to win the title this season to keep their championship window open? Like, do you think this is it for them?
How do I say this? The championship window is open, but not because the Lakers are a good team. It's because it goes back to something that you talked about earlier this episode is matchups. I think that the Lakers have a favorable matchup in majority of the rounds that or the people that they could see. But the Lakers are not a good team. And I say that because a lot of things that plagued them this entire year didn't reared its head against the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies just couldn't capitalize. This entire year, the Lakers have struggled defensively. They struggled. They don't close out on three-point shooters at all for some reason. And if LeBron James and Anthony Davis are not having a big game, the Lakers aren't playing well. And as we're seeing, LeBron James is in his 20th season having to play damn near the whole game. I think spoiler alert, I think Golden State lost a series last night. We'll talk about that in a second. I think they lost a series. I think if the Lakers played Golden State, it would be over with for the Lakers because of their lack of ability to guard the three-point line. And of course, Golden State's biggest of course strength is the three-point. But I will say that their championship window will probably close this year, and that's just because, again, if they play the Nuggets, let's go down the list. If they play the Nuggets, they have nobody that can really guard Anthony Davis. If Anthony Davis decides to play, Nikola Jokic, as we just talked about, his defense not happening. You're gonna trust Aaron Gordon to guard? Okay. If you talk about the Suns, you're really gonna have it's gonna be, and I think that would be the better matchup against the Lakers. but that means you're trusting Ayton to slow down Anthony Davis. I don't see it happening. I can see them throwing everything in the kitchen sink at LeBron James, but I don't know. The Golden State Warriors, they play the Lakers really well because of the 3-point shot, and you have Draymond Green, who he doesn't really have to worry about guarding LeBron James. You just focus on Anthony Davis because you have Andrew Wiggins playing well. But outside of that, it's just as we've seen with this entire playoffs or year, Golden State struggles defensively. And yeah, the Kings are light speed. They just run, and when they're on, they're on. The problem is they still don't play that good of defense. That's why these games have been so close. If they played they're the second or third worst defense in basketball. And that means that's even the same basketball that the Orlando Magic play. And if they were anywhere better than Golden State this series, or anywhere better defensively, this series probably would have been over. So I think that the window is open, but it's not because the Lakers are a good team. I think it's just because when we talk about matchups, they have a favorable matchup. The only problem is, can they capitalize on those favorable matchups? The Grizzlies were unable to capitalize because they're not that good of a scoring team. They're not that good of a shooting team. Your best player isn't a good shooter. He's good at. I mean, he has acrobatic moves like crazy, but not to mention, I think that the Lakers were just motivated because of all the Dylan Brooks talk and and want to rally behind LeBron. And so I to answer your question directly, I do think that the window is open for the Lakers, but it's not because they're just world beaters. It's because I don't really see they have a favorable matchup in every single person that they play. I think it'd be different if they played the Clippers. If they play the Clippers, I don't think they have a shot. A healthy Clippers, I don't think they'll have a shot because the Clippers present things like what you have Austin Reeves guarding Paul George. Come on now. If they played maybe a Bucks, that's why I said the Bucks loss was so. I think the Bucks can throw Giannis. I mean, who's guarding Giannis? So yeah, to answer your question, I think that the window is probably this year. But I just the Lakers are not that good of a team. They just have favorable matchups, and that's kind of what we saw against the Grizzlies.
It pains me to say this because I love LeBron James, and I am probably the biggest Anthony Davis apologist on the planet. It's now or never for the Lakers.
Yeah.
And it's not just because of the matchups. It's because this team, this post-trade deadline Lakers has played really good basketball together. There has been only a handful of times that this team didn't look that great.
Mm-hmm.
It was that game when AD had 10 and D'Lo was the game when everybody struggled against the Grizzlies in this series.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a couple of games towards the end there, the postseason. One of them was the first game LeBron came back, but that was because LeBron had just come back. He's the first time to actually get on the court with him. But this is LeBron James is not getting any younger.
No, he is not.
And I'm not saying he can't do it. I want to make this very clear. I'm not saying he cannot do it. It is not in the best interest of the LA Lakers to take the Miami Heat approach and pray to the God that LeBron James just backpacks it. Not a recipe for success.
Mm-mm.
38 years old. And while I understand he is the best 38-year-old, he's had the best 38-year-old season in NBA history. And he'll probably have the best 39-year-old season in NBA history and 40 because he continues to play at such a high level and he does things that's necessary to make sure that he is playing at a high level when he's available. But this team is only going to go as far as Anthony Davis can take them. And before, if any Lakers fans are listening, before you guys turn it off, I'm not going the health approach because I've said on this show a bunch of times that AD gets a very bad rap for the health because since Paul George and Kawhi Leonard has been in LA, they've each played less games than Anthony Davis has. So
hold on.
They have.
No, that's true. But
So,
that doesn't take away from the fact of in key situations or in situations where the Lakers would benefit on building some momentum. He goes out, but I
don't disagree.
Okay,
he does. The thing that makes Anthony Davis's injury history or whatever so egregious is because you're right. It always happens in the most inopportune time. Like it always happens when the Lakers are finally seeming to get it together, and then AD's hurt, and now they have to figure it out without him. And then he comes back, and he plays really good ball, and then like he's out again. So you're right on that point. But Anthony Davis, this series against the Grizzlies, a series where the reigning defensive player of the year resided in Jaren Jackson Jr. He had 26 blocks, which is the second most in a single playoff series ever. And to this point, he's led all players in basketball in the playoffs in rebounds and blocks. So a big part of the inefficiency on the defensive end for the Lakers has been the absence of AD because he is their defensive anchor, right? And we've seen this series that when he's available and when he's playing healthy, to your point, they do play better basketball. But the real reason why this is it for the Lakers has a lot less to do with them and everything to do with what's going on around them. The Kings are here to stay. This is not a flash in the pan season for the Kings, like the Hawks had a couple years ago when Ben Simmons choked and that ended his career in not just his career in Philly, his career, because he hasn't played basketball since really. The Kings are here to stay. The Nuggets are here to stay. The Suns are here to stay. You always have to be careful of the Warriors. I think this season was really, really bad because they struggled on the road really, really bad, but like they're still the Warriors. And when you look at other teams that are on the rise, when you're looking at a team like the OKC Thunder, who is getting Chet next year healthy, that could be very scary for them. If Zion is healthy for the Pelicans next year, they're in the mix. Like the West has a bunch of young teams on the rise. The Lakers, even though they are young, their two best players are up there in age. And arguably their best player is going to be the oldest player in basketball next season.
Yeah.
It's just there's not a lot of time left for the Lakers. It has to be now or never. With that being said, and you alluded to this, the Kings may have won this series with the win last night. Do you trust the Warriors, the almighty Warriors, who's never lost a playoff series outside of the finals in the Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, whatever era? Do you trust them to go into Sacramento tomorrow night, close out this series so they can host the first game of the second round against the Lakers?
No. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not because of, there's a couple things. One, how everyone knows how bad the Warriors' road record has been this year. I'm not going off of, a 4 championship in 8 years run. I'm going off of this season. And we talked about earlier the habits that you build in the regular season, which then goes into the playoffs. We understand in the regular season, they only won one game on the road against a 500 team. One game, 1 in 12, I believe. And we understand the how different and how good Golden State plays at home. So it was shocking to me how it looked like they just didn't feel like being there from jump. It just looked like they were just going through the motions. In a game 6 that can win them the series, they were just going through the motions. And please do not get me started with Jordan Poole, but it just looked like they just didn't want to play. And that's even Steph Curry. Steph Curry came alive in the second half, but they looked terrible. And it's like what you're doing is you're basing and you're putting your faith in something that we have not seen all year. And that is you win 2 consecutive road wins against a team that's above 500 And that's better than you in every single metric outside of defense. And it's not like
And the gap's not that wide.
Yeah, it's not like Golden State's 18th.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm watching that game like, how in God's name can you come out this lethargic in a game 6 when you know how bad that you've played on the road? And the Kings and what you're doing is you're giving a team that's never been there confidence. The Kings made everything in the world. Malik Monk made everything he put up, as well as Keegan Murray. And you just had a game where Domantas Sabonis, their second best player, had 7 points, 5 turnovers, and 6 personal fouls. And you lose that game by damn near 30. I just don't get it. I understand the whole flip the switch, but so what are you going to do? You're going to trust Jordan Poole to have an incredible game. You're going to trust Draymond Green to have another 20-point game. You're going to trust Andrew Wiggins, who had missed 2 months of the season. You're going to trust him to have another 25-point game. You're going to like what Moody is going to just go crazy. You're going to get a favorable whistle on the road. Like what is going to like? I just feel like they lost the series, man. They lost the series in game 6. And I understand people can say it would be a different series if Harrison Barnes would have made the 3. I understand that. It also would have been a different series if Andrew Wiggins made that wide open game he missed the wide open game winner in game 1. So I understand it, but that doesn't matter at all. The game that you needed was 6. I said it on the podcast. I feel if the Lakers know, just like Golden State knows, I understand they want to fall back on history, but if they lost game 6, I don't think that there's a chance they have game 7. Imagine LA playing as bad as they played in Memphis, going back to Memphis after getting upset at home. You beat the Warriors in the place that they've been one of the best teams at, and that is the Chase Center. Chase Center. So now it's like, I just think they lost the series, man. It pains me to say it, but I think they lost the series. I think as bad as they looked and as good as the Kings look, especially with their best player have a broken index finger, it's on his shooting hand. You lose by damn near 30. Yeah, I think they lost the series. That just seems there's so many things that have to go right that have not gone right this entire season. On Sunday, I don't see it happening. Jordan Poole had 7 points. He had 7 points and oh boy. And don't get me wrong, Steph Curry was great, but he had a game leading 5 turnovers. Klay Thompson had 3 of them things, and 2 of those turnovers where he was dribbling off his foot. So what are we talking about? Jordan Poole couldn't catch the ball. Did you see that play? Jordan Poole couldn't catch the ball, and it's like it rolled out of like. What are you doing? This is a deciding game.
Yeah,
you realize this team that you're playing wants to win, because if they lose, they're going home and figuring out their Cancun trips. They don't want to, like, what are you doing? And now you want to play an extra game and then go against a team that has a size advantage on you? Hey man, anything can happen, but I think Golden State lost the series in game 6.
I 100% agree. I am on record as saying that I do not like game 2 overreactions, because for me, a series doesn't start until game 3, because the higher seed is supposed to win the first 2 games, especially when they're playing one of the worst road teams of basketball. So even though Andrew Wiggins missed the game winner in game 1, the Kings being up 2-0 on the Warriors should not have been a surprise to anybody.
Yeah.
More importantly, the Warriors winning 2 in a row at home should also not have been a surprise to anybody. because as bad as they've been on the road, they've been just that good at home.
Mm-hmm.
Game 5 was the game for them to win, and they won it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the game they were supposed to win, and they won, and they came home, and they dropped a stinker. And that's not good. And I agree. I understand that there's the experience. That building's going to be crazy on Sunday. The Kings are going to have
galore.
so much energy.
Like the beam.
They're going to get out super fast. It's not going to be pretty for the Warriors on Sunday, I don't think.
The only way I think Golden State can win this game is if they play like they played Game 5, and the moment is just too big for the Kings because it is a young squad.
It is.
The only problem is the moment hasn't been too big for them this entire series outside of Game 3. And it's like, to me, the game that Golden State should have won is Game 6. And this would be the game, because if we talk about the track record of this year, the Kings win all their home games. Golden State wins. So it's Game 7 is the one where of course, Golden State has to win, not Game 5. That shocked me that they won three straight, especially with how good the Kings have been playing and how the Kings have been up by damn near double digits every game, and Golden State had to fight back. But of course, that is also a recipe of how this year has gone. Golden State comes with an arrogance, and rightfully so. They have earned their arrogance. The problem is you're playing against a team that's a better team than you right now. I will say, matchups wise, I think Golden State can win the championship this year. But I also think, just like we're seeing now, they can get bounced round 1. And I think they played around and they thought to themselves, oh, we just don't have it tonight. We'll get them back in, or the Golden One Arena. What they're doing is they're depending on people that have not been dependable this entire year.
Yeah.
You're depending on a bench that you don't even use. Moses Moody is getting more minutes than I can imagine. Kuminga has played 3 minutes this entire series. Or maybe like 13. You're depending on a man that in a decisive Game 6, when you see Steph doesn't have it, Clay doesn't have it, he has 7 points. You're depending on a Draymond Green to hit Dirk Nowitzki like fadeaways in the paint. You're depending on a player in Andrew Wiggins, and don't get me wrong, all good players. Andrew Wiggins has missed 2 months, and he doesn't have his legs in the second half because he has to run around and guard De'Aaron Fox because he's the only person on the I tweeted this. I know I'm on a little soapbox. I tweeted this. Jordan Poole had a series. This was a string of plays. Jordan Poole does the and one moves, gets the layup. The very next play, Kevin Huerter blows past him. Kevin Huerter, Maryland product, blows past him, gets the dunk. He then turns around, tries a scoop layup, and gets it sent to hell from Harrison Barnes. He blocked that shot so hard. And then Jordan Poole then comes, tries to split Davion Mitchell and Harrison Barnes, gets his strip. They go down, hit a 3. So in a span of 3 plays, he gives up 5 points himself. And this is the person that you think is going to step up and be the Jordan Poole of last year at one of the hardest arenas to play this year, against a coach that just won Coach of the Year, against a player that won the first ever Clutch Player of the Year, against a player that Malik Monk, playing like Kentucky Malik Monk. Look. I know what Steph Curry is going to do. I kind of know what Clay's going to do. Because Clay has in his mind that he's Game 6 Clay, and he took like the first 10 shots for some reason. And 4 of them Jones were airball. I just don't see it, man. I think the game to win was 6, and they lost it in resounding fashion. So I understand that they've shown that they can win at the Kings, but again, they are. In fact, if you want to add on the Kings, they are 3-15 on the road against an entire year on the road against teams above 500, and now you're playing with against a team that has the number one offense in the league. Yeah, man, I think they lost it. I think they lost it.
I agree. Couldn't have said it better myself, actually. It is always a pleasure to having Jalen on the show. Um, hopefully, he'll be on the show again in the not so distant future. But until then, Jalen, please let everybody know where they can find you and all your content.
The Unpopular Podcast. It is a podcast, of course, where I give an unpopular opinion about sports. Just hear me out. I drop every Wednesday and Saturday on wherever you get your podcasts of audio, Stitcher, Apple, Spotify. The visuals to the podcast on YouTube on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Premieres at 9 a.m. every Wednesday and Saturday. You can follow me on social media. Of course, I have Instagram. I also have a TikTok now that I don't know how to use TikTok, man. I just put my videos and just keep it moving because it's a challenge. But yeah, that's where you can find me. I do appreciate, of course, always being on, and I'm definitely, you're welcome to come on mine, and I appreciate the invitation to come on yours all the time. So I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, it's always a pleasure. As he's mentioned throughout the show today, make sure you guys check out the episode he dropped today.
Okay.
After you do that, come back here, or before you do that, whichever you prefer, probably after, because he does great things. After that, make sure you come back here and subscribe to the Give Us a Shot Network on YouTube. That is where I live. That is where Stuff About Sports lives with Bert and Germ. That is where JT and the Don of the JT and Don All Sports Podcast lives. That's where High Spots Podcast lived. And that is where, of course, The Divide Live, which goes live every Friday night on Fox Sports The Gambler, lives as well. If you want to follow all our individual stuff, just follow Give Us a Shot Network and you'll see it. That's really all we got for you. Next Saturday, as I mentioned earlier this week on Stuff About Sports, I will be flying solo to talk about WWE. So I will be cramming Jalen's content because Jalen is a much more composed man than I am.
Hey man, I don't watch wrestling, but I heard like Roman Reigns is kind of dominating for like years now.
Oh yeah.
Like
he's doing great things. Backlash is next week. So we're going to do a full preview of Backlash. Also, the WWE Draft, which started last night on SmackDown, will finish this Monday on Raw. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the new World Heavyweight Championship that was debuted last week or this past week on Monday Night Raw. And, of course, it wouldn't be Vince McMahon without a lawsuit. Vince McMahon has been sued again, and we'll dive into that as well. So make sure you tune in for that.
Jeff Hardy's coming back. Book it.
maybe that'll get him some good publicity. But like I said, it's always a pleasure to have Jalen on the show. Make sure you guys tune in his podcast every Wednesday and Saturday. And throughout the course of the week, every week, there's amazing content here on the Give Us a Shot Network. So for Jalen Hunter of the Unpopular Podcast and for all of my fellow shot boys here on the Give Us a Shot Network, thank you guys for watching. And as always, you guys enjoy the rest of your lives.
Much love.